I never thought my own children would laugh at me on the day of my retirement. There I was, sitting at the head of the dining table, my hair grayer than ever, my hands shaking slightly as I tried to cut the cake. It should have been a proud moment. 40 years of work behind me, a lifetime of sacrifice. But instead of clapping or thanking me, my son Mark smirked across the table. "That's it?" he chuckled, nudging his wife. "Dad's retirement gift is a wristwatch? From the company clearance bin, maybe?" Laughter rippled around the room. Even my daughter Emily, who used to be the closest to me, covered her mouth to stifle a giggle. My daughter-in-law whispered loudly, "All those years and he couldn't even manage something better for himself?" My chest tightened. The watch wasn't just a watch. It was custom engraved. A symbol of everything I had built. Every night I stayed late at the factory. Every weekend I missed with them so they could have school uniforms, toys, and vacations. But they didn't see it. They only saw a tired old man holding a cheap box. I tried to smile, but the pain was sharp. My wife, God bless her soul, had passed years ago, and I had prayed my children would carry her kindness. Instead, they carried greed. Then Emily, emboldened by her brother's laughter, said the words that cut me deeper than any knife. "Dad, maybe it's time you sign over the house. You don't really need it anymore. You'll be too old to maintain it." My fork clattered against the plate. "The house? The one I built with my bare hands? The one where I raised them? Where their mother took her last breath?" I stared at their eager faces. Mark leaned in, his grin wide. "Come on, Dad. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Just sign the papers." That was the moment I realized they didn't come to celebrate my retirement. They came for my inheritance. But what they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had one last card to play, and it was worth $2 million. The house smelled of vanilla frosting and cheap champagne. My neighbor, Mrs. Turner, had brought over balloons, and Mark insisted we keep the celebration small and private. I thought that meant family bonding. What it really meant was fewer witnesses to my humiliation. The cake sat untouched for a while because everyone seemed more interested in scrolling through their phones than celebrating me. I cleared my throat, lifted the knife, and said, 40 years. I gave everything I could. I'm just glad to be surrounded by family tonight. No one clapped. Not even a polite smile. Mark snorted. "Come on, Dad. Don't make this sound like some retirement speech from a movie. Just cut the cake." My chest sank, but I obeyed. As I sliced, Emily whispered to her husband, "This watch is his big reward?" I thought maybe he'd come out with some surprise, a car or something worth bragging about. Her husband chuckled. "Your dad's always been simple. Maybe he thinks being frugal is admirable." Frugal. That word hit me like a slap. I wasn't frugal. I was careful. Every dollar went toward them. When they wanted bikes, I worked extra shifts. When Emily wanted piano lessons, I sacrificed weekends. When Mark applied to college, I emptied my savings. Now they laughed like I was a fool. Mark raised his glass. "Well, cheers to Dad's retirement. Let's hope the nursing home he chooses has Wi-Fi." Everyone burst out laughing. My fork slipped from my hand, clanging on the plate. I glanced around the room, searching for a trace of love, of gratitude. None. Just mocking smiles. That was when Emily leaned forward, her tone sugar-coated but sharp underneath. "Dad, about the house. It's too big for you now. Why don't you sign it over to Mark and me? You could move into a small apartment. Less stress for you. The audacity." On the night meant to honor me, they were already circling like vultures. My throat tightened, but I forced myself to stay calm. "We'll talk later," I said quietly. But Mark wasn't about to wait. He slid a folder across the table, papers inside. "No time like the present, Dad." I looked down at the documents, my hands trembling. "Legal papers. Property transfer forms." The room grew quiet. Everyone stared. I swallowed hard, lifted my eyes, and for the first time that night, I didn't see my children. I saw strangers. As they stared, waiting for me to pick up the pen, my mind drifted back. I remembered the factory. The heavy machines, the stink of oil and sweat, the sound of metal grinding late into the night. I worked there since I was 18. 40 years. When I started, my hands were strong. Now they were calloused and weak. I remembered walking home covered in grease while my wife waited with dinner on the table. She would smile, tired but proud. "The children will thank you one day," she always said. She was wrong. I thought of Emily's piano recital. I had missed my own birthday that year because my supervisor asked me to stay for overtime. "Dad, you came." She had beamed, running into my arms when I rushed in just as the recital ended. I thought that smile was worth everything. And Mark, when he begged for that second-hand car in college, I sold my old tools, the ones I loved. Just so he wouldn't feel embarrassed next to his friends, I gave them everything. Everything. But what did I get in return? Laughter, greed, disrespect. My wife had passed 10 years ago. Cancer. She spent her last days in the living room of that house they now wanted me to sign away. She had whispered, "Promise me don't let them lose their kindness." I promised. And I failed. "Dad?" Emily snapped her fingers in front of me, jolting me back to the table. "We're waiting," her husband smirked. "He's probably daydreaming about the good old days." Mark shoved the pen closer. "Just sign. You don't need this place anymore." I stared at the papers again. They weren't just forms. They were betrayal in ink. If I signed, I'd lose the only thing that still carried my wife's presence. I felt anger rise in my chest, but I swallowed it. Instead, I smiled faintly and said, "Maybe tomorrow." Emily frowned. "Why not now?" "Because," I whispered, folding the papers shut, "I'm not ready." They didn't like that answer. I could see the frustration in their eyes, the hunger, but I had made up my mind. If they wanted a fight, I would give them one. The next morning, I found Mark in my study, rummaging through drawers. He didn't even look guilty. "Looking for something?" I asked. He straightened, holding the folder from last night. "You forgot to sign, Dad. Let's just do it now." My jaw tightened. "That's my private desk," he shrugged. "It's going to be mine anyway." "Why pretend?" His arrogance boiled my blood. I wanted to shout, but instead I sat calmly. "Bring Emily. We'll talk together." Minutes later, the two of them sat across from me, papers between us. Emily crossed her arms. "Dad, why drag this out? You can't live here alone forever. We're just trying to make things easier." Easier. For them, not for me. Mark slid the pen across again. "Sign it today." I picked up the pen. My hand trembled, not with weakness, but with controlled fury. I leaned down as though I would sign. Their eyes lit up, but instead of writing my name, I drew a single line. Then I set the pen down and pushed the papers back. "Not today," I said. Mark's smile vanished. Emily's nails tapped the table, sharp and impatient. "Why are you being so difficult? Do you want us to resent you?" I looked them dead in the eye. "You already do." Silence filled the room. Then Emily stood. "Fine, don't sign today. But remember, Dad, you're not as sharp as you used to be. Mistakes happen. Papers get signed." She smiled coldly. "One way or another, this house will be ours." As they stormed out, I felt my chest ache, not from fear, but from the heavy truth. They weren't children anymore. They were predators. And I, their father, was the prey. But deep inside, I also knew something they didn't. They thought they held the pen. But I held the real power. The next evening, I stayed upstairs longer than usual. I could hear them downstairs in the living room, their voices carrying through the vents. I wasn't meant to hear it, but I did. Emily's voice was sharp, impatient. "He's stalling. He knows what we want." Mark chuckled bitterly. "Old man thinks he's clever. But he's just delaying the inevitable. He won't last much longer. Once he slips, the house is ours," her husband chimed in. "We should push harder. Maybe say we'll take care of him. Make it sound like we're helping." Emily laughed. "Helping? We're doing him a favor by taking that drafty house off his hands." I pressed my hand against the wall, my stomach twisting. The house wasn't just walls and bricks. It was my life's work. It was where my wife's laughter once echoed, where the children had taken their first steps. To hear them speak of it like some prize to be claimed, it broke me, but I didn't cry. Not anymore. Instead, I listened. Mark lowered his voice. "Don't forget, he's got the savings account, too. Maybe some pension left. We'll get it all, one way or another." Silence followed. Then Emily muttered, "If he really cared about us, he'd hand it over willingly." No, I thought, if you really cared about me, you wouldn't be plotting behind my back. I closed my eyes, breathing slowly, and a strange calm settled over me. For the first time, I wasn't just hurt. I was watching, observing, preparing, let them plot. Let them sharpen their teeth, because they had no idea what awaited them. A few days later, I met with Henry, my oldest friend. We'd worked side by side in the factory for decades. His retirement had come earlier than mine, and he often warned me, "Watch out, old buddy. When money's involved, even family shows its teeth." We sat on the park bench, feeding breadcrumbs to pigeons like two tired ghosts. Henry squinted at me. "You look troubled. Kid's giving you a hard time." I chuckled dryly. "You could say that." He shook his head. "Don't be naive. Kids nowadays. Some of them don't see parents, they see bank accounts." I sighed. "I thought mine were different." "They never are," Henry said bluntly. Then he leaned closer. "So, did you ever talk to that lawyer, the one I recommended?" I nodded slowly. "Months ago." His eyebrows rose. "And?" I hesitated, looking around to make sure no one was near. I didn't tell the children. I set up a plan. Something that'll make sure the ones who truly care will benefit. And the rest. Henry grinned knowingly. "Good. Let them show their colors first. Then you'll know who deserves what." I stared out at the pond, my chest heavy. "Henry, it hurts." "They're my flesh and blood. Why do they see me as an obstacle?" He placed a hand on my shoulder. "Because greed blinds people. But don't worry. If you've set things right with the lawyer, you'll have the last word." I nodded, feeling the faintest spark of hope. Yes. I still had the last word. I still remember the day I walked into Mr. Harris's office, a quiet little building tucked between a bakery and a bank. Harris was an old family lawyer, someone I trusted more than my own children at this point. He welcomed me in with a warm handshake. "What brings you here, my friend?" "Retirement planning?" I leaned in, voice low. "Not planning, protecting." We sat for hours discussing my estate, my savings, the house. I told him everything, my fears, my doubts about my children's intentions. He listened carefully, then leaned back with a thoughtful nod. "You're right to be cautious," he said. "Families tear themselves apart over inheritance. But there's a way to stay in control." That's when he helped me create a secret will, a document that ensured my assets wouldn't fall into greedy hands. And not just a will, but trusts, accounts, and one very special plan. I smiled at the memory of Harris's words. Give them enough rope, and they'll hang themselves with their own greed. Together, we set aside funds. We arranged a transfer that none of my children knew about. The check, the one worth $2 million, was secured, waiting for the right time to be revealed. When I finally stood to leave his office that day, Harris had looked me in the eye. "Stay silent. Don't confront them yet. Let them reveal who they are. And when the moment comes, you'll have proof of who truly deserves your trust." Now, sitting in my study weeks later, hearing my children whisper and plot, I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. They thought I was weak. They thought the pen on the table was the key to everything, but the real key was already locked away. Safe, legal, untouchable. And one day soon, they would see it. The house was quiet the next morning, but my heart was loud. It beat heavy with memories, each corner of the home whispering my wife's name. I hadn't visited her grave in months. Maybe I had been afraid she would see what our children had become, afraid she would know how badly I failed. But that day, I took the long walk to the cemetery. The grass was damp, the air heavy with the smell of rain. I carried a small bouquet of her favorite flowers, lilies. When I knelt down, the stone was cool beneath my fingers. "Margaret," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I don't know what happened. Our children, they don't see me anymore. They only see the house, the money. You always believed they'd grow with kindness, that they'd carry your heart. But they..." My throat tightened. Tears stung my eyes. I can't stop hearing them laugh, Maggie. They laughed at my retirement, mocked me like I was a fool. And then they demanded the house, our house, the one where we raised them. "Where you..." Left me, the silence pressed in. I wiped my face roughly and leaned closer. "But I promise you this. I won't let them dishonor what we built. I won't let greed erase your memory. I'll fight, Maggie. I'll fight in a way they'll never expect." The wind rustled the trees as if she were answering me. For a moment, I felt lighter. I stood up straighter than I had in weeks, clutching the flowers close before laying them gently down. "I'll protect what's ours. I'll make sure they learn what respect means, even if it breaks them." As I turned to leave, I felt it deep in my bones. The fight wasn't just for me, it was for her. When I returned home, I found Mark and Emily waiting in the living room. Papers spread across the coffee table like weapons. "Dad," Mark said coldly, "we've been patient. But enough is enough," Emily added. "You're making things harder than they need to be. You're tired. We can handle things from here. Just sign and rest." I sat slowly, staring at their eager faces. The pen lay on top of the documents, practically daring me. "You think I can't manage my own life?" I asked softly. Mark scoffed. "It's not about that. It's about efficiency. About moving forward." My jaw clenched. "Moving forward? Without me?" Emily leaned closer, her voice low but sharp. "Don't turn this into a drama. Just sign the papers." I picked up the pen again, my hand shaking. They leaned in, watching every movement. I let the tip touch the page. Their eyes lit up, hungry. Then I scribbled something. Not my name, not my signature, just a long, meaningless line across the page. Their faces twisted in shock. "That's not valid," Emily snapped, snatching the paper. I set the pen down calmly. "You wanted ink on paper." "There it is." Mark slammed his fist on the table. "Do you think this is a joke? Do you think we'll let you make a fool of us?" I met his glare, my voice steady. "No, I think you've already done that yourselves." The room grew tense. I could feel their anger boiling. For the first time, I wasn't afraid. It didn't take long for things to get uglier. 2 nights later, Emily arrived unannounced, her husband trailing behind with a smug grin. She walked into my kitchen like she owned it. "Dad, we need to talk." I poured myself tea, ignoring her tone. "Go ahead," she crossed her arms. "We're done waiting. You're being selfish. You don't need this house. You don't need the savings. You've lived your life. It's our turn." Her husband smirked. "You should be grateful. Most people your age get dumped in homes. We're offering to take care of things." I stared at them, the steam from my tea fogging my glasses. Take care of things. Or take everything? Emily slammed her palm on the counter. "Don't twist it. You don't belong here anymore, Dad. This house is wasted on you. You're nothing but a burden." The words hit me like a knife. For a second, I couldn't breathe. A burden. That's what my daughter thought of me. I set down my cup slowly, my hand steady now. I looked her in the eye. "Enough." She flinched, maybe surprised by the firmness in my voice. "Tomorrow," I said quietly, "we'll settle this. Once and for all." They exchanged smug smiles, thinking they had won. But inside, I felt something shift. No more waiting. No more swallowing the pain. Tomorrow, they would finally see who I really was and what I had been hiding all along. The next morning, the house was strangely still. Sunlight poured through the windows, illuminating the dining table where I had placed a single sealed envelope. I called them all, Mark, Emily, and their spouses. They arrived quickly, as if drawn by the scent of opportunity. Their eyes darted around, searching for the property papers. Mark smirked. "Finally decided to be reasonable, Dad?" Emily leaned forward eagerly. "You're going to sign today, right?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I gestured toward the chairs. "Sit. We need to talk." They shuffled impatiently into their seats. Emily's husband whispered something under his breath, and they both snickered. I sat at the head of the table, the envelope resting in front of me. My fingers tapped it lightly. "I've been thinking," I began slowly, "about everything I've built, everything I've sacrificed. I wanted to believe my children would carry forward not just my name, but my values." Mark rolled his eyes. "Dad, we don't need a speech. Just get on with it," I ignored him. "But what I've seen instead is greed, disrespect, laughter at my expense. You think I don't hear the way you talk about me? About this house? About money?" Their smiles faltered slightly, though Emily forced a laugh. "You're imagining things?" "No," I said firmly. "I'm not." I lifted the envelope and held it between us. Their eyes locked onto it instantly. "What's that?" Mark asked, suspicion in his tone. "This," I said, "is the answer to all your questions. And today, you're going to hear it." They leaned forward, hunger burning in their eyes. But before I opened it, I dropped the final words that made them freeze, and I've invited someone else to join us. The doorbell rang, sharp and commanding. I stood slowly and walked to the door. When I opened it, Mr. Harris stepped inside, briefcase in hand, his calm presence filling the room like a quiet storm. Mark frowned. "What's he doing here?" Emily stiffened. "Dad, why is a lawyer here?" Mr. Harris set his briefcase on the table, clicking it open with precision. I'm here because your father has entrusted me with important matters. Emily's husband laughed nervously. This is ridiculous. We don't need a lawyer for family decisions. Mr. Harris adjusted his glasses. On the contrary, family decisions often need the most protection. Mark's jaw tightened. Dad, what's going on? I looked at them, steady and calm. You've been demanding answers. Today you'll get them, but not the ones you expect. Mr. Harris began pulling out documents neatly stacked. He spoke clearly, his voice slicing through the silence. Several months ago, your father came to me to prepare his estate. He expressed concern about how his assets would be handled, and so we created a plan. Emily leaned forward, her eyes darting nervously. A plan? What plan? Harris opened a folder, revealing official documents with seals and signatures. This house, the savings, and his retirement funds have already been secured. They are not and never were in danger of being taken through coercion or manipulation. Mark slammed his hand on the table. You're lying! No, Harris said firmly. It's all legal. Your father protected himself. What you've been scheming for is already out of your reach. The room went silent. Emily's face paled. You mean... We get nothing? Harris didn't answer. Instead, he looked at me. I reached for the smaller envelope in front of me, the one I had been saving for this very moment. Not nothing, I said softly. Something, but not what you expect. I slid the envelope across the table. Their hands twitched, ready to snatch it open, but I held up a hand. Wait, open it together. Emily tore the envelope open with shaking fingers. A folded slip of paper slid out. Not property papers, not deeds. It was a check. Mark grabbed it, his eyes scanning the numbers. And then his jaw dropped. $2 million? He stammered, his voice cracking. Emily snatched it from him, her hands trembling. This can't be real. I sat back, watching their greedy eyes widen, their faces pale with shock. That, I said quietly, was my retirement gift. My company gave it to me after 40 years of service. A gift to honor my dedication. A gift I planned to share. Their mouths hung open, stunned into silence. But then, I continued, my voice low and steady. I saw your true faces. I heard your whispers. I felt your cruelty. And I realized something important. Mark leaned forward desperately. Dad, we didn't mean it. We were just... Stop, I said sharply. Don't insult me further with lies. Emily's eyes filled with tears, though I couldn't tell if they were real or just for show. Dad, please. We didn't know. I shook my head slowly. No, you didn't know. You didn't care. You mocked me, pressured me, called me a burden. I pointed to the check still clutched in their hands. That money could have been yours. But not anymore, their faces fell. Desperation crept into their voices. Mark slammed the table. You can't do this! We're your children! Yes, I said quietly. And children are supposed to honor their parents, not strip them of dignity. Emily's voice broke into a sob. Dad, please. But I only looked at Mr. Harris, who nodded firmly. It's all final. Your father has full control. This money will go where he decides, not you. And in that moment, the room collapsed into silence. They realized the truth. The inheritance they had mocked, demanded, and schemed for was gone from their grasp forever. The room stayed frozen, as if time itself had stopped. The check still trembled in Emily's hand, her eyes wide, her lips moving, but no words coming out. Mark was the first to break. He slammed the check back on the table, his face red with fury. This isn't fair. We're your children. That money belongs to us. I leaned back in my chair, calm as the storm raged in front of me. Fair? Was it fair when you laughed at me? When you mocked me on my retirement day? Was it fair when you called me a burden in my own house? Emily sniffled, her voice weak. We were joking, Dad. You know how siblings tease? I cut her off sharply. No, Emily, a joke is harmless. But what you said, that came from your heart. From your greed, Mr. Harris cleared his throat, his voice firm. Let me be clear. Legally, this money is your father's alone. None of you have a claim to it. And if you push further, you could face legal consequences. Mark's wife muttered bitterly. So after everything, we just get nothing? I turned my gaze to her. You never wanted a family. You wanted a prize. And now you see what happens when greed guides you. Mark clenched his fists. So what now, Dad? You think you can just cut us out? I looked at him, my voice steady. I don't need to cut you out, son. You already cut yourselves out when you chose money over love. Their silence was heavier than any words. For the first time, I felt the weight lift from my chest. I was no longer the prey. I stood, reaching into the briefcase Mr. Harris had brought. Inside were sealed envelopes, smaller but just as powerful as the check. I thought long and hard about who deserves this, I said slowly, and I realized it should go to those who've shown me kindness, respect, and love. Mark scoffed. Like who? You don't have anyone else, I smiled faintly. You'd be surprised. I handed the first envelope to Harris. This portion will go to the local orphanage. For children who never had a father, children who would have given anything for what you've thrown away. Emily gasped, her face draining of color. You can't give it away like that. Oh, but I can, I said firmly. Then I handed another envelope to Harris. This portion will go to Henry, on my old friend. The man who stood by me, who warned me, who never once asked for a thing. He showed me loyalty you two never did. Mark shot up from his chair. That's insane. You're giving money to outsiders over your own blood? I stared at him. Blood makes you related. Respect makes you family. Finally, I pulled out the last envelope. My hands softened as I spoke. And this goes to my granddaughter, Lily, Emily blinked. Lily? Yes, I said with a nod. She's the only one who sat with me, brought me tea, listened to my stories when you were too busy laughing or plotting. She's shown me more love in her young years than you have in your entire lives. Mark and Emily looked stunned. Their children had outshined them in kindness. I placed the final envelope down. She will inherit what you never earned. The room filled with silence so sharp it cut deeper than any words. Mark collapsed back into his chair, his face pale, his fists trembling. Emily covered her mouth with shaking hands, tears slipping down her cheeks. You can't do this, Dad, she whispered. We're your children. I looked at her, not with anger but with sorrow. And I gave you every chance to be more than that. I gave you love, sacrifices, and years of my life. But you gave me only greed, Mark muttered through clenched teeth. You'll regret this. I stood tall, my voice firm. No. The only regret I carry is that it took me so long to see who you truly are. Mr. Harris gathered the papers, his tone final. Everything is sealed. The decision cannot be undone. Emily tried one last time, her voice breaking. Dad, please. We can change. We'll do better, I shook my head slowly. It's too late. Respect is not something you beg for when the money's gone. It's something you show long before. They fell silent, their shoulders slumped, their dreams of wealth slipping away forever. I turned toward the window, sunlight breaking through the clouds outside. For the first time in years, I felt free. I faced them one last time, my voice steady, clear, and final. Respect matters more than money. And now you know it too. And with that, I walked away.